we're gonna move to the next step. So I'm guessing that maybe some of you, many of you maybe, have made cookies, like where you roll out the dough and you have to stamp cookies out of it. And the idea is you want to get as many cookies out of something before you have to take the dough and mush it up and roll it all out again, right? The same idea, we have the same concept here. We want to use these slabs as economically as possible, okay? So I'm pretending like my slab is all one slab, even though it's not. So what you want to do is find a good spot for your template. Okay, I know that right here on my slab, it's too thin. So I'm moving my template back to a good spot here. I also want to make sure that I have room for 2 of these circles. So you guys might have room at the end, or you might have room to the side where you can get 2 of these circles and possibly a third one. The third one does not have to be perfect or as big, okay? So I'm going to lay my template down. I'm going to I'm just taking the pencil that I've got handy, and I'm just going to trace this first. Trace in my rectangle template. Okay, then I'm going to trace my circle template, and I'm putting it at one end because I want to try to get 3 of these. I want 2 that are good size, and the third one, if the third one is not quite full size, that's okay. Okay, so I can get 2 and maybe a little bit less than 2, so I'm just gonna let that run off the end over here. So 2 and just a little bit extra. And then you can take the ruler if you want to make sure you have a straight line. But the key is here, you want to hold your knife perpendicular, so straight up and down to the edge or to the clay. So perpendicular to the clay, so you have a nice flat cut. Same thing when you cut those circles, you want a nice flat cut. So when I'm cutting the circles, I'm going to be cutting up and down. Now these little scraps, don't smush them up. Just kind of pile them up off to the side and cover them with a plastic bag. Do not, no smushing. Keep them nice and flat off to the side. It will save you work in the end. I mean, you can fold them a little bit, you know, you can fold them, but keep them pretty flat. And the knife perpendicular to the surface of the clay. And you know, the circles don't have to be perfect. In fact, I'm gonna slice mine away from each other. Okay, so I've got like a pile of scraps over there. You see my pile of scraps. So I'm just gonna take a plastic bag and cover up my pile of scraps so they don't dry out too much while I work. Okay, if you have your things cut, again, take a plastic bag and just cover them up for a minute till everybody's in that spot. We'll just give everybody a couple minutes to get their stuff cut out. Okay, so next thing I need is my comb and my slip and my brush, but I still need that little knife. Okay. So remember how last time we did those 45-degree angle cuts on our slab where we held the knife and did that? So we're going to do that again, but before we do that, we are just going to just kind of dry fit our slab onto one of these. So I'm going to choose the thickest one of my circles to be the base. I'm going to set my other two circles off to the side. And what I'm going to do is this is actually going to sit on top of here. So because it's on top, I might not need, might not need all of my slab. So see how this is going to be sitting on top of the base, not around the outside, but on top. So what I'm doing to kind of pre-fit it is I'm setting one side on, I'm kind of judging around the outside, and I'm just going to make with my pencil, see how I've got this overlap here? I'm just going to make with my pencil a little line there. Okay. And when I flatten this back out again, I'm going to trim off that little bit of overlap. Now, I'm actually going to trim probably a little less than what the overlap shows because you can always trim off more. You can't add more on. Okay, so I'm still going to keep this little piece because these little pieces are going to be handy. So I'm sticking that little piece in there that I trimmed off. And then I'm going to hold my knife at that 45-degree angle, remember? But I'm pulling toward myself. I'm going to cut this side at the 45-degree angle so it bevels down. And then this side, I cut at the 45-degree angle. Got to scoot over. It's blocking my way. In this direction, okay? So that's like the undercut of it. Oops. Kind of lost my angle as I went there. So before I set this up again onto the base, I want to score the edge of this all around the circle. I'm going to score slide this forward. I'm going to score the bottom edge of my slab that I'm going to set up onto that. I'm going to score my 45-degree angle bevels. Okay. So those are scored. But I also want to prep some little coils because once I have this wall up here, I need to put a reinforcing coil in there like we did when we made those slab boxes. So I'm going to take some of my little strips here from my scraps. I'm going to roll them out a little bit and just prep a couple little coils here. That's probably good. Just want to go around the inside. I might just do another just cause. Okay, so I'm going to just take some of my little extra strips here, squeeze them out, and just kind of prep a couple little coils here. Oops. They don't have to be pretty coils. Okay, so you guys are Sculpture 2 people, so you guys probably know my next step then is to put slip everywhere I need it. So are you guys okay if I just continue? You guys working along with me at this point? It should be very similar to things that we've done in the past. I'm going to put some slip around this base here. You only need to put slip on one surface. So I'm going to put slip on the base. I'm going to put slip on one of my 45-degree angle edges. And then I'm going to set my wall, my scored edge of my wall, up onto the base. And I want to make sure that the sides are lining up flush on top of the base. And I can take my bevel and push the bevel edges together. So my sides are flush on top of the base. I'm pushing my beveled edges together. And I want to smooth out the bevel on the inside and the bevel on the outside. So I want to, my line is going one direction, so I'm going to smooth in the opposite direction, and I need to support on the other side. Grabbing my wooden tools here. Remember, you have to actually kind of dig in just a little bit, and you're actually moving clay across that seam. So at first, I always think of it like I'm kind of smudging it together because I'm really kind of grabbing some clay and moving it over, digging in a little bit, and then I'll clean it up and make it look nice after. And you also need to, you guys, the reason this is kind of the size is because it will fit in your hand okay. You also need to work up and down between the seam at the base of the slab and that circle base at the bottom. So you need to get this seam closed up too. Like I said, this is fine for working in your hand, but you know, if you have like a box or something that you could set it on so it's kind of raised up closer to eye level, that might be good for you too, and you can kind of rotate it a little bit. So I'm just making sure that it's knit back and forth there, and then I will make it look nicer. Yikes. Okay, and so then down in here where the wall meets the base, that's where I have to put in this coil. So make sure your coil is flexible enough. I'm just gonna lay it in there. Where I put my two bevel edges together, I don't want to have the end of my coil be there. So I'm gonna make sure that I have like a round part of my coil. I'm gonna get it, place it in here, right up against the wall. I'm just using my pencil to try to get it in place so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna pinch off a little bit that overlaps. And then we want to get this smoothed down to the base and up to the wall. So this is going to kind of round out that connection between the wall and the bottom. And notice my hand is supporting on the opposite side wherever I am doing the smoothing. Okay, so I've taken the coil and I've put it down in there, kind of smoothed it toward the bottom and up the side to kind of fill in that little dent. I like to go back in with my finger. I feel like my finger is probably a better smoother than the wooden stick, or I like the handle of the fettling knife because it's about the same size as my finger. And go in there and smooth that up a little bit. And if you think about it right now, because I keep forgetting to tell you guys to do this, because eventually these things are going to come here and I'm going to have to fire them. If you want to put your initials in the bottom, you just use your pencil and just write them small. They can just be on the edge or in the middle, wherever you want to put them. So, okay, so next step. So you should still have 2 more circles left. I'm going to shift this over. 2 more circles left. This is my not so good one. This is my good one. My good one is going to end up being the lid. Okay. The good one's going to end up being the lid. I might have to, make some adjustments. But this is going to be the little insert inside my lid that keeps my lid from sliding off. Okay. So if you, I'll come back to my beautiful diagram here. If you can envision this, I've got a circle that is my lid. I'm going to put another circle slab just inside this. So this is raised up higher than the inside, and then this is going to sit. So profile view. It's going to come down and sit inside my jar like this, okay? So this circle has another circle added to it. This sticks up from here, which actually means it's going to plunge down into here. So it's not tremendously tricky, but what we need to do is trim this one to be smaller than the interior of this, okay? So I can do that in a couple ways. I can just start kind of trimming away at it a little bit with my knife, figuring that this is about, I don't know, 1/4 to 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to trim around the outside a little bit. Because this little circle has to fit inside the jar or the cylinder. So I'm just going to try this out. And you don't want it to be like too small. I mean, that works. It's smaller, okay? Then what I need to do is score and slip this so that these 2 pieces are together and can fit into there like the lid, okay? So I don't just score and slip. I'm also going to have, once I score and slip it, I'm going to have to take my tool and just kind of like clean up that seam to make sure that there's no line there. Just kind of blend it out a little bit. But I want to try to get this centered as much as I can. I'm going to score the entire back surface of this smaller circle, and I'm going to score most of the surface of the bigger circle. I'm going to apply slip to the smaller circle. Get it covered up pretty well. All the way out to the edges. And you still want, some rough texture there, okay? But I'm getting this all covered with slip. Kind of line it up. Give it a little push. So before I do any smoothing though, I'm going to test this out and see if this will fit in there, which it does. Okay, and then I'm going to take one of my little curve tools and just, all I'm doing is blending away. I'm just connecting that, moving a little bit of clay across that seam where the 2 pieces connect. You still want to try to keep this lid pretty flat as you do this. You don't have to work with it in your hand. I'm just doing this so I can show you what it looks like. And I'm just maybe gonna, on the top, this part of this edge of the this little plug or whatever, the smaller circle, I'm just gonna push in a little bit, just pinch in a little bit, just so it maybe is a little bit narrow, a little bit more narrow up here. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So what I'm doing here is I've just kind of rounded that off just a little bit, just a little bit. I'm gonna make sure that this still fits on here. You know, I want a little space there because we don't want it to necessarily stick to our cylinder. And then I'm just gonna take my finger and kind of clean it up a little bit. And again, I don't like the slicey look, so I'm just gonna take my finger around that rim. And around this rim too, a little bit. So these are still flexible, so you can put the lid on and you can, it'll work together. So as far as like cleanup goes here, all right, we have exposed a lot of clay to a lot of air by flattening out that whole thing of clay. Okay, we want to still be able to work with this next class period. So for the cylinder, you're going to push a plastic bag inside and make sure that it comes up high enough that it supports the lid. We don't want the lid to slump and kind of, you know, get saggy in the center, okay? Because we want to have, you know, a jar that looks like this next time. You're going to take this whole thing and put it inside another bag and make sure that this is wrapped up nice and tight. Okay, and your scraps. So I mentioned something about having that little pink bowl with some water in it. If you didn't throw it away, you now have a whole empty Ziploc bag that you can use for your scraps. Because the surface is already exposed, just dip, if you dip these little things in here and just throw them in your scrap bag, dip your little pieces of scraps in the water, that's enough water to kind of saturate them so that they will reabsorb some of that moisture for next class period. So instead of sprinkling or dumping water into your bag, just dip your little pieces into the bowl of water, oops, and put them into your scrap bag, and then make sure your scrap bag gets closed up. So since they're flat, they've got a lot of surface area to absorb the water, which is nice. It will rehydrate them for next time. Like I said, we got a lot here. I've got this whole big piece. I'm just going to tear into chunks, dip it in the water, and put them in the bag. So now your scraps should be nice and flexible for next class period. So before I lose you all, okay, let me just show you what's in the folder. So there's a folder of some ideas, okay, for you guys. I'm going to flip over to that real quick. So you're going to add some pieces onto your sculpture. So in this folder, there's just a whole bunch of ideas of things that you can do. You could make like a weird face and add on pieces with coils and little spheres. This one's kind of nice because it shows you like the understructure of like the pieces that you might need and how you might smooth that out to look like a face on your jar. You don't have to be really representational like this is. You could just make it kind of odd if you want, like that one. Some other little faces. I guess I found a lot of faces. Give you some ideas. But you can also, add doors or carve things in. You can add your initials. This person did some weaving and some pretty three-dimensional flowers. If you do anything thin like this, we're going to have to make sure you wrap it up nice and tight. Some of these are boxes with details on them, but you get the idea. The rule of thumb is always, it should not be thicker than your thumb. So like this little device here, I would say is probably a little too thick, but you can add vines, you can add, we're looking to add three-dimensional things onto the surface of this jar. You could have something that comes down along the, up the side and goes up to the top. You can do a combination of having some things stick pretty far out and maybe doing a little bit of carving either into the objects that you stick out or a little bit into the surface of the cylinder. The thing is, though, I want you thinking about these ideas, thinking about what you could do. You could make it look like a tree stump. Okay, carve some wood texture into it or add some wood texture on. So just a bunch of ideas here of just some things you can add on, like a little creature head onto the lid or something like that. Just threw a bunch of ideas in here just so you guys can maybe get some inspiration, okay? So if you are at home and you do not need my help and you have successfully made your lid, you need to think about ideas and you need to be ready with an idea for Wednesday because you're not going to have time to like fart around and think about what you want to do because then you're going to lose time to do it, okay? So you need to come up with an idea, think about how you would do it. Are you going to use coils? Are you going to pinch some things? Everything's going to have to be scored and slipped onto it, okay? Think about what you want to do before class on Wednesday. But if you have this all set and you've got your cylinder done and wrapped up, you can be dismissed from the meet.